sucked forcefully into an oil-coated 30-inch underwater pipeline at immense speed. These 5 men found themselves in an unimaginable waking nightmare, but only one of them would live to tell the tale. A GoPro camera mounted on one of the divers recorded the exact moment disaster struck. What it unveils will send shivers down your spine.
Dude, it was
on
all
February
recorded.
25th, 2022, at the Berth 6 platform in Pointe-à-Pierre, the men of LMCS, Faisal Kirban, Kazim Ali Jr., Rishi Nagasar, Yusuf Henry, and Christopher Boudram were tasked with maintenance work on a dormant pipeline. The pipeline belonged to Paria Fuel Company, a government-owned oil company in Trinidad and Tobago. The pipe in question was a 30-inch
I'm like looking at this like I know what the is going on. Okay, so they were fixing the point right here. Okay.
U-shaped pipeline which runs along the seabed. It was designed to transport oil from Berth 6, where ships unload their oil, to Berth 5, the refinery. While some risk was involved, the 5-person diving team were well-prepared and experienced divers.
Dude, I could never do that, man. Okay, I am terrified of the ocean, actually. I think the ocean is one of the scariest places. Like, I think the ocean might arguably be scarier than space. The ocean is terrifying to me. I could never do this, man.
The team placed an air tube
These guys are
inside
so
a
much
diving
more
bell,
brave than I am.
a unique habitat shaped like
I mean, okay, I would do it if I absolutely had to. Like, if my life depended on it, then yes, you know, you have the survival instinct. But, like, this is their job, bro. Like, you know.
the team placed an air tube inside a diving bell, a unique habitat shaped like an 8-foot cube. The diving structure provided a dry workspace for the LMCS maintenance team. LMCS installed the cube structure over the pipe at Berth 6 to displace the water inside the work area. The cube created a pressure pocket of air that forced out the ocean water to create an appropriate workspace. Once ready, this work area allowed the crew to remove their diving gear and safely use their tools to perform their essential work. Undoubtedly, they had completed the procedure hundreds of times. As the 5 veteran divers performed their duties, it was business as usual, until it wasn't. The company installed an inflatable plug 2 weeks earlier to protect the pipe's oil and prevent contamination. The line wasn't in service then, though it could be put into service when needed. The industry calls this dead legs, and it isn't without its risks. While this is standard procedure, the process requires intense planning, process hazard risk assessment, and close monitoring. Preparing for maintenance jobs like this can take days, if not longer. Unfortunately, this likely means the oil company wasn't willing to prepare for a safe operation. But like most employees, the 5 divers were following orders.
Do you know what's
The
sad,
divers
man?
descended to
Is that those 5 divers, the company did not give one single about them, I bet.
their work site, unaware of the surprise. As it turns out, inflatable plugs like this are pressurized, holding back the high-pressure air in the diving bell and the low-pressure air in the pipe itself. These events created the formula
Like, okay, I'm going to be real. I don't understand any of this. I'm so stupid, man.
for disaster. Once Ali Jr. handed a wrench to his crewmates in the diving bell, they began loosening the valve to release the plug. The 5 divers had no warning. As soon as they released the plug, the pressure difference turned the inside of the pipe into a relentless vortex, ruthlessly sucking in air, water, the no warning valve to release the plug. The 5 divers had no warning. As soon as they released the plug, the pressure difference turned the inside of the pipe into a relentless vortex, ruthlessly sucking in air, water, people, and equipment into its depths. The power of the suction was too strong, and a torrent of water surged into the diving bell, turning their sanctuary into a death trap.
Holy shit.
The sudden influx of water and pressure differential unleashed a force that yanked the men and their tools into the narrow pipeline. In the blink of an eye, they found themselves hurtling violently through a whirlpool of water and oil for an agonizing 90 seconds, fighting for oxygen. Suddenly, they came to a stop. They gathered themselves, and assess their positions in the pipe, realizing the gravity of their situation. They discovered that the violent tornado of water, air, and oil left them settled somewhere in the line where an air pocket allowed them to breathe.
Just try to imagine you're in a tube or a pipe that's your prison, and magically there's this pocket of air that is in there that is allowing you to breathe. But outside of that pipe is literally the ocean. Even if you get out of the pipe, you still have to deal with the ocean. Like, I can't even imagine how much fear that would put in you.
The sole survivor, Christopher Boudrum, vividly recounts how it went down.
Tornado, everything just spinning and beating you up, and it happened so fast. I couldn't react. The only thing I remember able to do was cover my head, like in the fetal position. After that, all I remember, I didn't even remember actually getting pulled in the pipe. I just remember getting pulled through the pipe at unbelievable speeds. I couldn't hold my breath no longer, man. Throat, and you holding your breath for too long, after a while, your body, your lungs just fight. Yeah, waist closed, you see a noise. Your body suffering to pull air. An unbelievable nightmare. Your eyes burning. Every time you try to open your eyes, it's burning. You're pitch black, you can't see nothing. Your throat burning. Your ears ringing. Your body sore. And at that point, I tell myself I was going to end dead.
Their struggle
Holy
for survival
shit.
was only beginning. The men were trapped inside a 1,200-foot-long oil pipe, disoriented, injured, and in absolute terror. Amidst this chaos and fear, the men tried to communicate and keep each other's spirits up. However, the reality of their situation squashed down any hope of survival. The GoPro that had been with them for the dive recorded every second of their plight, capturing the sheer terror and sounds of struggle as the men fought for their lives. Chris initially believed that they had been hurled through the pipe head first, so they had to crawl backward to make it out of the pipe. But Kazim, Yusuf, and Faisal were sure they had gone in foot first, so he trusted the judgment of the majority. As the least injured diver, Chris placed his feet on Kazim's shoulders. He then instructed Kazim to pull the rest of the group together and instructed Faisal to push everyone since he was at the back. Linked together as a chain with Chris in front, they started trying to make it out of the pipe. Squeezing their way through thick, slippery oil residue in pitch-black darkness was unbearable. Dealing with broken bones, burning eyes, a burning throat, and extreme discomfort weighed them down. Their progress was excruciatingly slow, and the end was nowhere in sight. The men kept praying and moving to the best of their abilities. They eventually came across 2 oxygen tanks with the regulators still attached. Chris informed the men that breathing the air inside the pipe could make them delirious and
'cause
nauseous.
it's oil, right?
He advised them to take small sips from the tank in intervals to keep clear
Bro, they can't even breathe.
oxygen in their system. Although they found oxygen tanks, water levels rose as they progressed. Christopher noticed that some group members struggled to breathe and suffered various injuries. Others were blocked and unable to move. He decided to check how much the water would rise if they continued. As he moved forward, Chris came to a horrifying discovery. The next segment of the pipe was entirely underwater, and with just 2 oxygen tanks for 5 individuals, it wasn't safe to proceed any further. Knowing this, Chris had to make the hardest decision of his life. He had to continue alone to get help for everyone. Chris prepared himself to tell the others. After explaining the situation to them, they agreed it was their only chance and gave
Holy
Chris one of the
shit.
oxygen tanks. Chris promised that he would get help and come back for them, and left. Still not entirely sure if he was going in the right direction and how much air he had left in the tank, he swam through the submerged section with the tank in front of him, hoping he would find another air pocket soon.
I mean, he had to go. There's no way that if he has a chance to get out that he stays down there.
The entire pipe had flooded sections, and some contained air pockets. After fighting to make his way underwater, he realized his oxygen was running out based on his air quality. With his diving instincts in overdrive, he breathed the last air in his tank. As if fate intervened, his tank collided with another metal object before him. It was another oxygen tank. He quickly tried to find the new tank's regulator. After scrambling in pitch black, he finally found it, but the regulator had no mouthpiece, so he pushed the whole thing in his mouth. His mouth was covered in oily sludge. He managed to take a relieved breath.
Oh, so this is gone. He had to put this whole thing in his mouth.
Regulator had no mouthpiece, so he pushed the whole thing in his mouth. His mouth was covered in oily sludge. He managed to take a relieved breath from the tank. He knew he couldn't stop and continued with all his strength, uncertain how long he could survive. As he clambered through the pipe, he finally entered another air pocket. Yet, instinctively, he knew his only escape was returning to the riser. Unfortunately, this section of the pipe was half full of water. He found another air tank and reached the last flooded section before the riser. At this time, he heard Faisal calling out his name. He had been following Chris. He asked Chris to wait before he entered the last flooded section, but Chris told
Oh my God. So this means that he took their other tank. So the other 3 men, they knew they were going to die, and he probably was the least wounded. So they probably told him
he couldn't wait any longer. They had been in the pipe too long, and that their time was running out. He continued until he found the bend in the pipe that he hoped would lead to salvation. After what seemed like hours, this next decision would decide his fate. This was the moment of truth. Either this was berth 5, which was sealed off by a plug, or this was berth 6, where they came from.
Oh my God.
As he made up his mind for the 3rd time to die, with one last push of determination, he kicked off towards the riser. As Chris continued to swim, he realized how tired he was, but he was determined to make it out and save his crew. Chris eventually reached the top of the pipe. Though he survived the ordeal, it wasn't over yet. As Christopher recounted the situation to the medical care staff, he recounted as many details as possible about the men and their position. Unfortunately, the rest of the LMCS team couldn't believe Christopher's story. The company assumed that the pipeline was full of oil and that any oxygen tanks they had would only give them an hour of air each. Rescue divers from the LMCS team dove down and knocked on the pipe, trying to find where the men were. They received the satisfying sounds of someone knocking back, undoubtedly providing the trapped men hope. But the LMCS team had yet to find a way to get them out. As the hours ticked by,
they were still alive.
The 4 injured divers suffered through their injuries, dealing with dwindling air, a curtain of suffocating oil fumes, rising seawater, and carbon dioxide. Though it seemed that Paria Trading Company and LMCS would initially save the 4 men, a rescue never came. The company pulled the 4 remaining bodies days after the incident began. They performed autopsies, but
dude, what did I tell you? They don't give a... Imagine the amount of hope you have to have when you're one in that situation and you knock on the tube and you hear a knock back. That means there's someone out there. Imagine the amount of hope that you would have hearing that. Like I can't imagine. I can't. I bet in that moment, that single sound was one of the best, if not the best sound that they have ever heard of their entire life. And they didn't even save him, man.
No one could agree on when each man died. Officials decided they survived until Saturday, but some speculated that one endured until Monday. Officials launched a commission. Some died.
When did this happen? What day did this happen? So they were down there. So they were stuck in that pipe hoping for days?
Officials decided they survived until Saturday, but some speculated that one endured until Monday. Officials launched a commission of inquiry in Trinidad and Tobago to investigate the circumstances that led to the Paria diving tragedy.
Because everything inside me open, I rescue him. Everything inside me open and rescue was going on. Nobody was making an attempt to rescue me.
Damn.
I always somebody who doesn't know what's going on, and I was always somebody who could control and see things through, and I feel like.
Man, that's like beyond that he even thinks for a second that any of that was like his fault. Why didn't they just cut the pipe? I mean, I'm sure there's a reason, but is there, okay, they didn't cut the pipe because of greed, obviously, but is there like an actual like scientific reason like that they didn't cut the pipe? Pressured, okay, yeah, okay. I mean, I imagine there would be, I just didn't know what it was. I'm honestly surprised that they're like talking as much as they are after that happened.
Yusuf, anything happened to you? Yeah, boy. What happened? Alright.
Jesus Christ. Here's some additional facts. They were in there for 4 days, and on the third day, people were still hearing banging on the pipe. Paria got the Coast Guard to stop divers from rescuing the men trapped. There were multiple divers ready and willing to go in from LMCS and rescue the same hour, but all were blocked from going in. Paria said that the Coast Guard will be doing the rescue, but the Coast Guard said they had no equipment. The families of all the divers sat in the refinery car park for 4 days waiting to hear news about their loved ones, and the company couldn't even give them some water to drink. It was community members who brought the food and water for the families. Jesus Christ. They left those men in there to die, and 4 days had passed, and they were sure they were dead. They flushed the bodies out of the pipe as quickly as possible. This damaged the bodies and flooded any air bubbles remaining, so if the men were alive by then, the flushing operation probably killed them. The bodies were retrieved in secret, placed in boxes to disguise and then snuck out via a back entrance when the family members were left waiting. The families were never informed that the men had died or the bodies had been retrieved. They found out via television news program. No one from Paria ever met with the families at any point. They were just outright ignored. When questioned in the Commission of Inquiry, it was revealed that no rescue plan was ever made. They simply sat and waited for the men. Yeah. I mean, I believe that 100%. I believe it 100%. I said at the very, very beginning of this video, before it started to get into it, that I didn't think that the company gave a about any of those men. Paria had the pipeline capped off on both ends so no one else could escape. What in the... Chris tried to check himself out of the hospital but was restrained and forcefully sedated on the orders of Paria, who feared he was planning on mounting his own rogue rescue operation. He later confirmed he was. No arrests were ever made or charges filed, and no one was fired or at least suspended from the company for the failing. Not a single cent was paid to any family yet. No new security measures or operational protocols were ever implemented or existing ones updated to prevent something similar from happening. Indeed, Paria never even promised or announced plans to make any changes of any kind whatsoever. The remaining and new divers that were brought in were simply told to be more careful and that it was a responsibility to prevent accidents of any kind. When first informed of the accident, the first thing the Paria managers asked was how much downtime there would be. Yep. This was the first and only concern. Yep. Paria resumed operation the very next day after the bodies were retrieved, although the company wanted to resume work the very same day, but it was a nightmare already. This included the pipeline where the accident occurred, which was put back in use the next day as well. In fact, 5 minutes before they started using it again, they flushed one last time. Bits of diver suit and human tissue were still inside, and once they came out of the pipe, they were simply discarded in the ocean. The company has an extensive history of corruption. Its managers are in bed with the government, and they use the company to do underhand business so they can steal tax money. Okay, I mean, like all this stuff may or may not be true, but well, this 18. The company was originally called Petrotin until a scandal involving the prime minister who was, I mean, keep in mind, like I believe all of 18. It's just like, obviously, accusations like this would need evidence. But prime minister who was found to be selling the oil illegally on the side using a friend as a straw man to avoid jail. They closed the company down and started 5 new companies from it, Paria being one of them. Furthermore, local rumors have also swirled around claiming that the government is doing oil deals with Venezuela secretly to avoid sanctions, as Maduro and the TT Prime Minister Rowley are apparently good friends, and if the divers had survived, the spotlight would be placed on the company, which would also face legal actions. Yeah, so they basically killed them to avoid any legal stuff. Dead man can't sue you. Yep. Thus making it much harder to do their corrupt deals, so they were left to die, and the government-run company got away with it with no consequences. Yep. They actually could have saved him. Well, I mean, probably. They could have saved him. Well, that was rough.